transferable skills.
From Cackle Media, this is Transferable Skills. I'm Noah Mishkin. Today's guest is Laura Greer, who shares her skills journey from shoe and apparel sales into property realtor. I hope you enjoy. Laura Greer, thank you for being here on the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. When I was growing up and going to school, going to college, a lot of my friends had direction, where they wanted to be, what they wanted to do when they grew up, and I never had that. So I got a degree and I didn't ever use my degree. I grew up in St. Louis. I went back to St. Louis for a year and all my friends were in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago and everybody said, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm going to get a job." There was this fabulous shoe store about 7-8 blocks from my house. And I went in and I'm like, I love shoes. I love people. Let's go. So that was really my first job out of college. And it was sales, straight sales, 100% commission. And I rocked it. I loved it. It was not only an education in shoes, it was an education in people, in cultures. And my goal at that point, when I got into the shoe monger business, was this is really cool, but really maybe I'd like to move up into the corporate area, become a buyer. And what I found out was that I didn't want to do that in that company. But what happened in that job is that I made private clients would come back to the shoe store. It was called Churn Shoes. And many people who live in Chicago know of Churn-ins. It was the last self-standing store that Churn-ins built, and it was near Halstead and Diversey in the Lakeview community. And if you walked into a Churn-ins, you were going there to buy, usually. It wasn't a browsing situation. They had a parking lot, and you went there to buy. And so I created relationships with my clients. I love people. I love to learn about new people. And so when someone would walk in, and I sold women's and children's shoes. As we do in sales, you size up the person. What are they wearing? What do their shoes look like? For a woman, what type of purse is she carrying? Whether she's in ripped jeans or not, if she's wearing Cole Haans, if she's got a fancy purse, she has money or she spends money on these types of things. And I was good at assessing my customer, talking with them and creating relationships. So people would come back to the store and they would ask for me. And I actually had a record. I once sold 14 pairs of shoes to one person at one time.
Holy cow. Was it 14 of the no?
It was all different kinds. And that
incredible.
was my first job.
I haven't heard the name Churn Shoes in so many years. I would never be able to pull that out of the depths of my brain archive. But when you said that, boy, a wave of memory washed over me. I remember going there. The way you describe your role, knowing your clients, them coming back to you specifically because you know them and you have a relationship, is literally my recollection as a child going there, because we would drive that far. There were plenty of shoe stores and options that were probably closer, but we went there because of that customer service. They knew us. Right. We knew them. It was familiar. It was certainly not a conveniently located store for us where we lived, but it had that reputation. It was about client services. It was about understanding their needs and their style, maybe even budget. And that was the place to go. That's so cool that you were.
Thank you. You said something very interesting just now. You said it was all about the relationship and the client need. And that is the key to what in my jobs, all the jobs, and now in the career that I have. Everything is about clients, their needs, meeting their needs, and being the best. So it started off with selling shoes. Now, just so you know, my grandmother sold shoes. My father sold shoes. I happen to love shoes. I always, as a kid, there was a shoe store where I grew up in St. Louis, and there was a gentleman there, and he was my shoe guy. And he would call me when shoes came in that he knew I would like. And when you like nice things or you happen to like shoes, it just was a theme. But what I didn't realize until later in life is that I love to help people. So whether it's helping you find a pair of shoes, helping you find the right clothes, which I'll tell you about, helping you find the right vitamin, or helping you with your health, or now helping you find the right home or sell your home. And I didn't realize it until this moment. That's been the theme of my life, is how can I help other people, make them feel seen and heard, and do a service for them and get paid.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, and getting paid is a key component of one's job. Helping people is a great through line, a wonderful theme that probably came naturally to you. Shoes was in your blood. It was like you were born to do this.
Right.
It was your heritage and family legacy. I like that you fulfilled that though. As you describe your role selling shoes, you talked about understanding the clients, sizing them up in a way where you could get a persona, a profile. Was that instinct or were you taught how to sell?
I think it's always been instinct. I'm a very social person. I love meeting new people. And even though I would say as a young kid, I don't think I had a lot of confidence, I was confident in that setting. I wasn't afraid. They did train us very well. They really gave us a whole education on shoes and how they were made and how to fit someone properly. I'm not sure that's done anymore when you get a shoe sales
Hmm.
position. But also, my managers liked me and they helped to give me confidence. But as far as just approaching human beings, that is something that I was born with. And
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy for other people. I actually would like to tell you one beautiful story that I've never forgotten. This was a life lesson. A family walked in who didn't speak a lot of English, and there was a young person with them, and she was clearly ill. Turned out she had leukemia, and it was winter, and she was very swollen, and she needed a pair of boots. And I brought out probably every boot we had in her size. And the only ones that she could get her foot into were these really expensive boots that they could not afford. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of money. I probably would have just bought the shoes for them. And so I begged my manager to give them this big discount. And he couldn't. He wasn't able to do that. And they couldn't buy the shoes. And I literally went in the back and cried because I couldn't help these people. And I thought to myself, this isn't just about selling shoes. This is about helping people. And it was a real experience that has stayed with me forever. And I think I've always, you can look at it, oh yeah, you sell clothes or shoes, or you can look at it as, no, you're helping someone to clothe themselves. And maybe that piece of clothing or those shoes gives someone confidence. And I look at the glass always as half full, and it's easy to think, oh, you just do this or you just do that. But then if you think, how is my job or my career helping other people to be their best at what they do? It's a beautiful feeling. And I was sad that day, and I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah. What could you have possibly done? You couldn't have given a discount unless you were given the permission to do
Correct.
so. But maybe later on in your life, there were areas where you could be more autonomous and independently make those decisions that help other people.
I've
benefit from
actually
somebody else
done
or
that in
whatever.
my career now, where I'm representing the buyer and something happens in the course of the sale and the seller refuses to pay for it and the buyer can't or doesn't want to pay for it. And there have been times that I talked with the listing agent and we as agents say, you know what, this is $1,000 or this is $500. Let's you and I split it. We'll take it off of our commission so that we can get this deal done. And I've done
Yeah.
that. And that feels really good because it's not about just the commission. It's about helping others to reach their goals. So you're right. I never once thought about that until you said it, that I took my experience from the past and now I'm able to actually do something about it to help someone. So
Yeah. The frustrations of our past probably influence us more than the successes that we don't remember. And those frustrations, the things that we wish could have been different, are the things that guide us towards making a difference in the
100%.
future. Even your description about, I'm not just selling clothes, I'm not just selling shoes. It's what kind of influence or impact is this going to have on the individual who's buying them, giving them the confidence, giving them the opportunity.
It's all about caring about other people. We're only put on this earth for so much time. So what are we doing here? And what is our role? What is our job? And so from selling shoes, I actually got my next job through one of my personal clients. She worked at the Apparel Center and I ended up there for a few years. It was the same kind of thing. It was clothing. It was selling clothing to stores. And it was all about their needs once again. And I was good at it and I liked it. There were definitely new skills I picked up because I didn't know that when you sell sweaters, you get one small, two mediums, and one large, like things are packaged. But all of the core skills, the people skills, relationships, cultivating the relationships, knowing what to anticipate, all of that was transferring skills. And then it was just learning about a new industry. So I learned all about that industry. And it was interesting. It wasn't as gratifying in many ways as a selling shoes because I was salaried. And I made a lot more
Yeah.
money selling shoes than I did in the apparel center because I was working for someone else. And
Yeah.
I'm a very independent person. Either I was going to become a rep of my own line or I was going to move on. So then I ended up in a different industry. And then I had 3 kids and I quit to take care of my kids. That's about when I met you.
You didn't quit. You
I
shifted. You
shifted.
shifted your job
Yeah,
description.
I became a mom.
Yeah, you were your own boss at that point, but unfortunately, the customers were a lot more difficult to satisfy.
Yeah, because I have 3 little boys and it kept me on my toes like 24/7. And I didn't go back to work until many years later outside of the home because working in the home
Yeah.
is 10 times harder. Raising children is very hard.
It's a 24-hour job. That's just where it begins. And then there's so much more understanding the various needs of independent children at various
Right.
ages can be very challenging in its own right.
100%. After I had children, I ended up divorced. And a few years later, I was lucky enough to meet a wonderful person who I'm still married to. And he has 3 children and he had custody of his children. So with my 3 children and his 3 children, we got married, we moved in. And
Yeah.
one day a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, I'm selling these vitamins and skincare, and I really want you to come to this meeting." And I thought, "Oh, I'm not interested in that." She said, "Please come." And she was a good friend. So I went. So I listened to her spiel and I thought, okay, that's very compelling, but yeah, I don't have any extra money. And I got out of there as fast as I can. And I've always been interested in being healthy. I was having an issue with a lot of cleaning products in my home, just giving me headaches. And one of the things she sold were green cleaning products. So I tried a few products, but the truth is I tried them because there was a 100% money back guarantee no matter what. And I thought, okay, I'll be a really good friend. I'll buy a few of these products and then they won't work and I'll get my money back. And the opposite happened. I bought some of these products. They were amazing. I lost a little weight, which I wanted to do, and I could clean my house and I didn't get a headache. And she said to me, "You could sell this stuff and you could make a little money." And I thought, oh my gosh, I could totally do that. And I could do it on the side because I could do it when I would want. And so I took the plunge and I signed up to become an independent Shaklee distributor. And it's a network marketing company.
Can you help describe
So
it?
a network marketing company is where you sell products. You're an independent distributor. So you're working on a 1099. There's no salary. And anyone who you teach and train to be on your team to also sell those products, they're on your team. And then you begin to make a small income from whatever they sell as well. I loved the products. It was so easy for me to sell these products. The key to making significant income in a network marketing company is to have your own team. And that's something I never wanted. I just wanted to be my own boss, do my own thing. And I can spread myself very far and wide, as we say, like in a network marketing, you can have customers or you can go deep and have a large organization. I just was never interested in having a large organization. So to this day, I have a great residual income from this business. But as my kids were getting older, I had a little bit of money coming in from this. It was actually more than a little bit. It was a great amount of money for the time I was putting in, and it still is. But when my youngest child was 16, I thought, okay, what do I want to do? I want something else. I love this company, but this isn't what I want to do. And I kept talking to myself in my car. I would drive around and say, "Laura, what do you want to do? If you didn't need the money," which we did, "if you didn't need money, what would you do?" And for months, I kept thinking, what is the right thing for me? There has to be something. And one day I turned my head and I saw a for sale sign. And I thought, oh my God, I could do that. I had odd jobs when I was in high school. And one of the jobs I had was answering phones at a Coldwell Banker when I was 17 or 18. And I loved it. I loved the buzz. I became friends with one of the realtors. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I could do this now. And that's when the whole major pivot began, when I had that revelation.
Looking back at that time spent in your car where you're asking yourself, what do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? And I think the important message is if money doesn't matter, because it does matter and it is important. We have bills to pay and there's a responsibility that we have at the very least to ourselves, if not certainly to our family and our children, and making sure that we are providing food and shelter and clothing. But the question of if money doesn't matter is an important one because it helps you identify what gets me excited, what makes me happy and fulfilled. And if you can find those answers, those jobs that fit that description, maybe you can tease out from there more realistic things that actually do pay. Driving by for sale sign on a home and saying, I could do that. You knew that because you had some of that experience already. And on the foundation of one of your core values and principles of helping others, I think that's probably a perfect balance, a symbiotic relationship between what can I do professionally and will it help?
You're right.
Was there a sense of apprehension or an uncertainty about how to get into this?
So yeah, when I was strictly selling Shaklee, I would go to network events in the community. I belonged to the Chamber of Commerce. And I would say 3 years before this revelation occurred, I was at a holiday party and I met a woman who was a realtor and we became fast friends. We started having lunch together, having coffee. I would hear about her business. She would hear about my business. And we started an accountability partnership. So every Tuesday, we would talk about our weeks in the past, what our goals were for the coming week. I went to this meeting. It was just me and her. And I said, her name was Christine. And I said, Christine, I had this epiphany. I was thinking maybe I should become a realtor. And first of all, I'm 5 feet tall. Christine is 6 feet tall. And she literally leapt up like out of her chair, nearly hitting the ceiling. She's, oh my gosh, that is the greatest idea. And at the time, she was working for App Properties. She goes, I would introduce you to my manager and we could do some things together. And oh my gosh, this will be so much fun. She made me feel so good about the fact that this was such a great idea. She was screaming. And I thought, okay, like maybe this really is something. And you would be perfect for this. And she went on and on. So that was the first thing. I never even said anything to my husband.
She was your cheerleader.
Yeah, complete cheerleader. So then I went home and I said to my husband, I'm thinking about this. He's great idea. So go do it. He was so supportive. At some point, I went upstairs to the computer. I went online to the real estate school she recommended. And it was a Thursday. They had a fast track class that was beginning that Monday, like 3 days later. And I think it was $750. And for us at that time, I was thinking, can I do that? Like it's $750. And I remember I came halfway down the stairs. My husband was downstairs and I said, well, there is actually a fast track class that starts on Monday. He goes, well, go do it. And I said, $750. And he's go upstairs and sign up now. And I was like, but he goes, no, but do this. I'm like, it's 3 weeks and it's every day. And I don't know, like it could be a lot of studying. He goes, okay, go do it. There was no question in his mind. And I said, I might not be able to cook dinner or do the laundry. And he's go do it. I was like, okay. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, honestly.
You also didn't have any obstacles. He helped remove some of those obstacles for you, the barriers, all the things in your head that might be sincere considerations of who's going to make dinner, or who's going to drive carpool or do these other things. Those are real considerations, but they can also lend themselves to be excuses to keep you from accomplishing your goals.
And I was afraid at that moment. I was afraid because I was never the greatest student. I always swore I would never go back to school. And I was scared. Like, can I do this? What if I fail? And I've always had that little, you're not good enough. You're going to fail. You can't do this. And thanks to my amazing husband, Joe, he was like, no, you got this. So I went upstairs. I remember like hovering my finger over that button And then I just closed my eyes and I clicked. And right after I paid, I actually got a phone call from someone at the Real Estate Institute. And he said, "Hi, I see that you just signed up. I want you to know that there's a book you need to pick up, and you can download the first class, but the way it works is you have to read all the material before you go to the class." I thought, okay, fine. The book was literally this thick.
Yeah. How was that weekend for you?
I really freaked out. And my husband was like, you can do this. So I ended up driving to the Real Estate Institute and picking up the book. And I nearly cried out of fear.
Yeah.
And I remember being very scared. When I told my kids, they were all just, "You rock, you're awesome. You're going to be the best realtor in the whole world," which was really nice. Once I got that book, I said to my husband, "I'm going to have to be in the library." So it was 3 weeks of nonstop studying. But I thought, I am going to do this. I don't care what it takes. So from start to finish, I became a realtor. In 6 weeks, I had a job. It was crazy.
That's awesome. It's very daunting, stressful for many students at any age to have to study for and prepare.
I was in my 40s and it was very stressful. I will tell you, the interesting thing is, like most of what I learned in real estate class, it didn't prepare me to be a realtor. When I was hired at Properties, they had an RE 101 class. And that's what prepared me for really being a realtor. What's step one? What's step two? What if you have a client? What do you do with them? How do you search online? How do you write a contract? What do you look for? And the truth is, I think we all know in life, as we get older, there's nothing you can learn in a book that is better than life experience. And so I think, when becoming a realtor or doing anything else in this world, quite frankly, you need a mentor. Sometimes you don't. I guess it depends if you're hired by a company and they're giving you training, et cetera, et cetera. But I've been very blessed. I've had a few mentors. And my managing broker, who is just phenomenal, said to me, "You are my best and easiest hire ever, because when you came here, you already knew how to run your own business." So when I became a Shaklee distributor, my business leader, Jennifer, taught us how to run our businesses. And all of those skills that I learned in my becoming a network marketing professional, I transferred immediately into being a realtor. Nobody needed to tell me, "Oh, you needed to keep track of your clients. You need to make sure to keep in touch with them. You need to take people to coffee. You need to ask people how their families are." First of all, that to me, that's just human being 101. So if you love people and you're curious about others and you really are truly interested in people's lives, you develop relationships. And when you're in sales, people want to buy a product or use someone who they know and trust. So I had already built my relationships. So when I announced to all of my clients and all of my friends that I was becoming a realtor, I immediately had clients, because they knew that if they had called me about what vitamins they needed or what green cleaners were best for them, and I gave my all to them in that industry, why would I not then help them find the right house or give my all and help them selling their house? I think this is a brilliant podcast, because what we don't realize as we're in our 20s and sometimes even in our 30s is we have skills that are lifelong skills that we've developed throughout the course of our life. And we are constantly transferring our skills from one thing to the next. And if you're not, like, something's wrong, something's wrong. We are all so diverse and we have different strengths and weaknesses. And when we take our strengths and we are able to develop them in a way and then transfer them into making a living, it doesn't feel like work. So I'm very grateful to my business leader in Shaklee. I'm still very dear friends with her. I've had a couple people who helped me along the way, but I just feel grateful. And it's not an easy business. Real estate is not easy. I'm constantly challenged. I'm constantly learning, honing my skills, my people skills, taking deep breaths and trying to be calm. But all of the skills that I learned in relationship building, I've transferred to real estate. It's love and relationships first, real estate second. And that's what the original owners of App Properties have always taught us, which is why our logo is love, because it's love first.
That's awesome. I love that. Technical
Sure.
question. I often hear the term real estate agent and then I hear real estate broker. What's the difference?
In order to become a realtor, you have to be a part of an organization, whether it's, we live in Chicago. So whether it's the Chicago Association of Realtors or it's the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors, you have to belong to an organization. And at the beginning, you have to take some of their classes. And realtors are bound by ethics, morals, things like that. There's a whole code of ethics. You can be fined. You can be taken to realtor court. And realtor is a trademark name. You can't just throw it around, and it is capitalized. And if you don't belong to one of those organizations, then you're not a realtor.
You're
You're an agent. So I think that's an interesting distinction. It's a professional organization, and you're bound by ethics.
So if I'm a realtor and I'm part of an association, a larger organization, a group, a community, what kind of advantages does that provide?
Well, you have access to the multiple listing service online, which is where we find things. If you're going to work for App Properties or Coldwell Banker or Century 21, you need to be a part of a realtor organization. They give fantastic classes, which I should take more advantage of in my free time.
Think back to when, those classes were $750 and you weren't sure about that.
These are free.
Take advantage of them now.
One thing I've really learned throughout my jobs versus my career, whatever, there are differences here, but I do believe now I have a career. In the past, I had different jobs that prepared me for this career that I've chosen. And one thing that I think is true across the board is when people trust you, they will listen to you. Everyone wants to know what's good for themselves. So when I post online. I don't love social media, but I do it because it's just something you do to get your name out. And I think what I've realized is it's not about posting, oh, hey, I'm selling this house, or look at the cool house I saw today. It's more, how can I be of help to you? Do you need a handyman? Do you need a painter? Did you realize that property taxes are due tomorrow? Hey, have you ever thought about getting involved in your chamber of commerce and maybe changing the rules and regulations of X in your community? And it's not about being there, getting online for your face and your exposure only, which is important because you want to stay top of mind, but it's what am I giving to the community? So I will regularly post tips on taking care of your home, or if you need a loan, consider getting a home equity line of credit instead of X, Y, and Z loan. And I have people from the community reach out to me, hey, I really need a great plumber, and I'll give them my plumber's name, or I'll recommend 2 people. When you give easily to others and you're not expecting in return, I think that's when you get the return. I've had people refer me who didn't use me, who've said, I wish I had used you, but I'm going to give you this referral because I think it would be a great fit. So if everyone in the world, that's a nice dream, would focus on how we can give to other people, that's really when we get back.
Beautifully said.
My dad, who's almost 90, who's still working every day in sales, every client had an index card, and it was their name, their address, and all the notes I kept on that client. I handwrote all of those things. And I had months of the year and then days of the month. And I would put that person, once I spoke to them, then I would put it 3 months behind. And then every day I would look at who I was calling that day. And
a manual CRM.
That's exactly what it is. And that's what everybody uses.
That's so funny.
That's what everybody uses. That's what my dad still uses that system.
If it works for him.
Yeah, he's not going to switch to a CRM.
Nor does he probably need to.
Nor does he need to.
Tell me about your process in technology operations, how your workflow.
Sure. Whether I get a new buyer or a new seller, if someone calls me, I have a checklist of everything that I do with each new listing, each new buyer. And the first thing that I do is schedule a call. The second thing I do is put their information into my CRM. App Properties has a phenomenal interface for us. So other than marketing and listing information and digital listing presentation or digital buyer presentation, which I can create my own, they also have a phenomenal CRM that I use every day. And all of my clients are in there. So I have a checklist and I will print out, because I am a very visual person. And I also like to hold a piece of paper in my hand. For every one of my clients, I have my checklist, whether you're a buyer or you're a seller. And there are a lot of steps in when you're buying a home or when you're selling a home. So whether it's setting up the offer, setting up the inspection, the negotiations, and I have everything on a checklist. Even if it's something that I am not necessarily going to be involved in, like when the attorneys get involved, I still have that on the checklist. And it helps me in my mind to stay focused on all this different steps it takes to get from the original accepted contract to the closing date. And it's not a straight line ever.
No, I have a checklist that's identical to how you describe yours for this show, even though I'm primarily the only person responsible for every step of this podcast. I want to, first of all, make sure that I'm consistent, that my workflow is consistent, but also that I am optimizing my workflow. And the only way to optimize is to analyze what you're doing, and to analyze is to write down and to understand each step.
I do have that for my clients. It doesn't have all the minutia that they don't have to worry about, but it's incredibly helpful to them. Before I actually give them that, I have a discussion with them. I'm going to tell you all about the process, and then I'm going to give you a document that shows you all that. And when we go under contract, I have a whole timeline that I mark up for them and I send it to them. So they have all of that. But it's important to understand before you're under contract, how does this work? What am I going to expect? So that is really key, so that everyone I work with isn't in the dark. They know what is coming next. I've learned that along the way, because in the beginning, I didn't even know what the next step was. So I try and preempt all of that fear and stress in my clients and explain to them, this is what's going to happen first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. So that is part of my process. I also go into my CRM every day. It gives me a list of who I'm supposed to be reaching out to. I love what I do, and I hope that other people who are watching this can think about what do they love and transfer whatever it is they're doing now into something that they truly love.
Great message to end with. Thank you, Laura. This has been a great conversation. I love learning more about a subject that we all have some superficial or pedestrian level knowledge about, but really lack a tremendous amount of insight about the details of what goes on in the background. It's great to hear how you got into it. As an important message to take away also was that discovery for yourself. It's asking, what do I want to do? Regardless of how viable it is, reasonable, forget about money. Does that matter right now? Or can I think about that and discover my joy and opportunity without imposing all of the other restrictions or necessary details about what a job actually is? It's important to find out what you love, what you believe you'd be good at, and then just go do it. That was awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I wish you all the best in everything that you do.
I want to thank Laura for being today's guest, and to you, our listeners, for joining us on this episode of Transferable Skills. Remember, the skills you've gained can take you anywhere. Until next time, keep exploring those transferable skills.